All right, welcome back to another episode, Armac and Coots. We're just keeping them rolling here. What's going on? Episode 3. What's up, Bryce? What's going down?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Just man, coming off the hype of that draft, and for the Seahawks fans out there, I think. I'm not trying to jinx anything, but I just think it's another, A+ draft. I mean, maybe not a plus, but I really like what they did, and obviously tonight we're just going to kind of run through it and kind of pick by pick and kind of break it down. But overall, I was happy. I was happy, a little surprised, but definitely when all said and done, I was like, man, they really seemed to just take what they needed and just fill other areas, and even from the last pick, you're just like, okay, I mean, they knew what they were doing all along, and it just looks, right now on paper, it looks good. What are your thoughts?
I feel like Seattle's kind of finally hit their stride with drafting players. So what I mean by that is, like, you look at their drafts from probably, I don't know, I'd say 2013 to last year, they struggled getting like a solid draft class where, like, you could go through it and you can go, yeah, like they hit on this guy, they hit on this guy, they hit on this guy. Like, okay, they missed, but at least if you had, like, say 10 picks, 7 of them were hitting in these new classes, but before there was like maybe 2 that would hit. Like, you think of I'm just trying to think, like, you go back to like Tyler Lockett's draft. There is literally Tyler Lockett's like the only guy out of that draft class that's even on the team. Their 2013 draft class, there is nobody. I know it's 10 years ago now, but really, even when they had that draft, the only guy that was viable out of it was Luke Wilson as a backup tight end. So, I look at their class and I look at what they did the last 2 years. And granted, they had some more draft capital than normally afforded to a team that finishes in the playoff hunt. But honestly, like, they filled a lot of holes. They got a lot of good, like, guys that can come in and compete
Yep.
right now, which
Yep.
is a big thing that I think they lost their way. When you listen to guys like Sherman and
Right.
even Bobby talk about it, and
Right.
KJ Wright, I know his podcast is out now, and he was even talking about it.
Yep.
There was a point there with Seattle where the guys that were there that were the Legion of Boom,
Right.
and those guys all were about competing for their job
Yeah.
and, like, had that chip on their shoulder. But the guys they were drafting, Seattle was almost drafting for need rather than best player available or
Right.
best like attitude in how
Yep.
you compete and stuff. And the problem
Absolutely.
was is then these guys just came in and were in such awe of all these guys, of Thomas, Chancellor, Sherman, all. They weren't competing for the job. They weren't trying to go take their job, which is what made Seattle so good early on.
Right.
And I think now they've started to get back to that, where they're getting guys that are just dogs and just want to come out and just want to just go for it and compete every day.
And yeah, and you know what? I agree with you. I love the dog analogy, like, straight up. I mean, look at the guys last year. Let's get right into it right now. The first guy on the board, a bit of surprise. I mean, a bit of surprise to me. I think it was definitely a surprise to you as well. First episode, we talked about, the big three, sort of. Maybe that would be at 5. You had Richardson, Carter, and Wilson.
And Anderson.
And Anderson. Well, we thought he'd probably go early on, but and we were like, well, Carter is either on their board or not on their board. So if not, maybe it's these other 2 guys. Richardson went 4, so then you're like, okay, is it Carter? I mean, I was anticipating maybe hearing that announcement after Richardson went off the board, and then all of a sudden, Pete doing Pete things, man. Like,
Yeah.
goes out and gets a dog in Devin Witherspoon. And it's like, at first you're thinking, okay, that's an interesting pick. Best cornerback in the draft by far, right? The kid's tough, he's smart, and I think you and me talked about it and said, well, they got Mike Jackson, but is he that guy? And obviously the answer is no. I mean, is he on the roster? Sure. But this kid, he seems like a good kid. He's tough. He goes after it. He's smart. To me, I love the pick. And then I was reading, talk about, I think at Illinois they ran like 75% man. And I think overall giving up like 12 points a game. And so it was like, just and I know that's a team stat, but just I love the kid's toughness. He's a little undersized, but he's tough as nails, and he's hit. And you talk about, like you just said, the drafts from prior, dudes that set the tone is like what I like to say. The Cam Chancellors, I know he's not the same position, but you get a guy like, you remember that Super Bowl hit, who set the tone in that Super Bowl first hit, they're like, okay, we might have a problem here. This is the tone setter, man. So now you got a guy across from Tariq. Potentially you got a really nice potential tandem, young tandem.
So like no one's expecting Witherspoon, right? He's just kind of, this pick that they'd done some due diligence on prior. No one's really talking about him. I was at the same point with you where I was like, okay, here comes Jalen Carter. They're going to take this guy, or they're going to take Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. But it was just when I saw the name come and I saw the ticker for the pick go all the way down. So I'm thinking, okay, they're either going to take Carter, they're going to take Wilson, or they're going to trade out. And I was like, you cannot trade out of this spot. We talked about that. You can't. It's a luxury pick. Use it on somebody. So when I saw Witherspoon, I was like, actually, this fills a bit of a need for them. They needed another guy. Like Mike Jack came back. He was an okay corner last year. You got Trey Brown, you got Kobe Bryant, who played well in the nickel. So I was like, here's a guy. Like, here's an actual bona fide stud opposite the guy you've already got who's a stud in Woolen. The thing that's crazy about it, like you were talking about how they like to run man coverage at Illinois, and they ran a lot of it last year. So last season, Witherspoon had 107 snaps in press coverage man. He allowed just 1 yard in coverage on all those snaps. So the guy just can lock you right up. No effort. The thing that I like about this pick and how this plays to Seattle is everyone always talks about rebuilding the Legion of Boom. The one thing in the Legion of Boom was you had Sherman on one side, and then you just had this revolving door of guys. We can go through the list. Daryl Simon, Brian Maxwell, Jeremy Lane, Deshaun Shedd. They tried to even bring in a guy in Kerry Williams. So it's always been this revolving door. Now you've got two solid guys on the outside. You don't have to worry about. And the thing is, both of these guys can play man. They can play off. You can do a lot of different things with your defense and your disguising of what coverage you're in because of these two guys' ability to play. And the one thing that was interesting is what Pete Carroll said after the draft about Witherspoon was that he is a rare player in the sense that he is one of the few guys he's seen that IQ-wise on a football field rivals Troy Polamalu.
Yeah, well, exactly. He brought up that comparison, and even Witherspoon's coach said that this dude is a very, very smart football player, and hence why he picks up plays before they're even happening. Like he can pick up. He recognizes route combos. He recognizes wide receiver splits. Like he's just, his IQ is up there, and they love that, right? So not only the physical aspect of the guy, but not the guy knows what's happening at a young age like that, and so only going to get better and
oh yeah,
developing. Like I remember, and that's opposite almost to Wolin. Like here's Wolin, who's a freak athlete, like just a freak of nature, and I remember watching Diggs, and the guys absolutely love him, right? But they're straight up saying like, this dude just doesn't even know what he's doing. But yeah, good play, Tyreek. And they're like, he's like, hey, it was like, not that he's stupid, but it sometimes it you don't just get like the fact that Witherspoon's coming in like polished with the mind, like that's just not.
Yeah,
it doesn't always happen like to that level.
Well, not like you're talking about. Like Woolen was a freak athlete that did the Sherman thing. Started out as a receiver,
right?
Switched over to corner.
Right.
So a lot of what he did last year, I think, was the fact that teams tested him and he was athletically able to make up for the fact of maybe not being 100% correct in, the concept of the coverage or whatever. Now the guy on the other side, you can leave Witherspoon on an island. That's one thing he's good at. But he may not be the same freak athlete Woolen is, but he's the stronger IQ DB right now so you get the best of both. If you really want to test Woolen, go for it. The dude's going to make some plays as a freak. You come to the other side now, it's like, okay, now we're going to run some, stunts and some misconcept or mismatch concepts and stuff like that on the other side. Well, Witherspoon's going to be able to pick up ID and jump those routes. So it really now allows, I think, in the key of all this, I don't think it's being talked about. This allows Quandre Diggs, Julian Love, and Jamal Adams to play more free as safeties. They're not having to necessarily worry so much about, oh, we've got to give help all the time to these young corners. They've seen what Tyreek can do, and he's gonna, he's got the offseason now to get better. They see what this Witherspoon kid's like coming right out of college. We don't have to necessarily oversee everything that they're doing. We can now play a little bit more loose, free, attack the ball. Like Jamal can play down in the box. Julian Love and Diggs can sit back there and ball hawk. They don't have to be, and that was the great thing about the original LOB is they understood what they were doing so well that they didn't have to be so tense about it. They could actually free play. And you looked how many picks Earls used to get when he was sitting in the back end, just reading the quarterback and going and getting the ball.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love the pick. And, the other crazy thing about him is, I mean, he's only been playing ball about 7 years.
Yep.
He picked up football, junior year of ball, and he comes out to practice like, yeah, I came out and made a few interceptions, and coach is like, yeah, you're starting, can't remember whatever position he was, but yeah, I mean, cool story, man. And it seems like, overall, it just seems like a great kid, like you talked about character. So I'm excited about that. Let's jump into the next pick, man.
The next pick, Seattle at pick 20. Now, this one surprised me because when I was watching the draft and you see the guys start going off and, the linemen started to go a little bit, and I'm going, okay, Seattle's got pick 20. Like, are we going to go after a D tackle that's possibly sitting there? What is Seattle going to do? Are they going to trade out? Because I expected them more or less to trade out a pick 20 to try and recoup something and have another day 2 pick or something like that. And all of a sudden I see that Seattle's pick goes in. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to actually use both these picks for, the first round. And when I saw Jackson Smith Jigba's name come across, I went, that is a game changer for this offense. Like, you now legitimately have a top trio of receiver core in the NFL, because what he does is something that Tyler and DK, like Tyler used to do. He doesn't do it anymore, but he comes in and fills a specific role right now and can play and plug and play. Like, both him and Witherspoon are plug and play guys. Like, we're not developing them. They're not going to take a bunch of, reps on, not, practice reps or whatever. We can put these guys right in and let them go to work. And there's a couple guys that I like, a couple reasons I like him. The dude had a grade of a 91.7 in 2021 for PFF. So Pro Football Focus, they grade out all these players. The dude played 3 games in 2022. Like, he had a hamstring injury, then realized he was going to the draft, so he wasn't going to push it. But the dude outproduced in that Ohio State offense Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson their 2 years before they went into the draft. So there were the 3 of them in the receiving corps. So you had CJ Stroud throwing to those 3 guys, and he outproduced them just playing in the slot. He doesn't have breakaway speed. Like, he's not, going to blow by you and go for, 60 yards. What he's going to do is he's going to be your sure-handed guy on third down. He's going to just be open all the time. You watch this film, the dude is open all the time. So now as a defense, when you come to play Seattle, you go, okay, we can't double DK. We can't double Tyler, because if we do, then this kid's just going to eat us alive in the middle. So now you get a lot more single coverage. DK can take the top off of defense. Tyler can still do his thing, but you got this guy now that's going to be able to run all these routes, all these different concepts, give Geno a guy in the middle of the field, and he's still got Noah Fant that can still run routes as a tight end. So you really have 4 solid options, which will definitely give Geno a massive, massive upgrade in that position in the slot now as a third receiver.
And like you said, another plug and play guy in the first round. You got 2 plug and play guys. So it's like, you can already envision what the offense is going to be. Like, Shane can already say, hey, I can already, schematically work with this kid in what I want to do offensively. It's not like with Tyreek. It was like, like on the defensive side, but hey, you're probably going to get a lot of reps of special teams. And then, during camp, they're like, hey, wait a second, we got something here. Where it's like, no, this is a plug and play. Witherspoon's a plug and play. So now it's like you got a guy that's just a polished route runner too. To me, you got one where Witherspoon is like IQ wise, with minus the physical attributes, like he's ready. And then this kid on the offensive side, like the route running polishness and the stop and start ability. Like you said, he's not blowing a top off, but you don't need him to. You come in, he's shifty, he's this, he's that. He's gonna. I'm not gonna say he's like Doug Baldwin, but the beauty, like Doug was a guy that just like an amazing route runner. Like just you need him on a third down play, boom, there's Doug. Like get your first down, right? So man, that's what I could see this guy doing in a lot in that offense as well. So plug and play on both. So like first round, you plug and play, and it's beautiful. Like you say, you didn't see a lot of that in the past. Where was you look back, like even the Penny pick in a late first round, like okay, like a good back, but you know what I mean.
Honestly, think about it though, Ryan. Think about if you go back in Seattle's first round history to when John and Pete got here, because this is their 14th draft together.
Yeah.
Give me a first round pick that came in and made an impact for Seattle.
Right.
There's only been two.
It's tough.
And they were the only two that were the guys they picked the first year they were there, which was Russell Okung and Earl Thomas.
And I guess I would say Charles Cross.
But that's what I'm saying. These last two drafts, take those out. Drafts.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, take those out, and you go back to their history.
You're right, yeah.
It's basically been Russell Okung, it's Earl Thomas, and then I guess you could throw Bruce Irvin in there from the 2012 draft.
Yeah, you could, yeah.
But realistically, the impact guys were Earl and Okung. The rest of those teams were built from undrafted and 3rd to 7th round draft picks.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I mean that's the exciting thing about the first round. It was like you said, it could have went a lot of different directions. You could have took Tyree Wilson because people are, I'm sure they know the pressure of that front seven, and hey, this is our priority. But the next guy we're gonna touch on, like they know, hey, wait, guys, it's a long draft. We have 10 picks. There's guys that fly under the radar that will fit our system. We don't need to make the big name splash in the Jalen Carters. And then there's more that's come out. We don't need to keep touching on Jalen. But so when you look at the first round, I mean, I graded an A. Is because it's just, you said, right now, triple threat offense of the receiver, right? Not even mentioned in the running game yet. But and then on the defensive side, you got a guy like just the perfect package on the corner there. So, and we'll talk about how, next episode, how they're going to all compete and work with each other. But not something I thought about. We thought, they probably take a receiver at some point in the draft. I wasn't sure. I didn't, like you said, I didn't think it was going to be 20. I thought maybe they'd address, we threw a few names out last time, but when it's all said and done, man, I love the way the first round went,
I don't know if there's a way that first round goes better based on how that board fell for them.
Yeah.
And the thing too that I think a lot of people forget when it comes to the draft and that is they look a lot of how these guys produced in college.
Right.
And think that's what the NFL looks at. The NFL looks at guys and goes, how does this guy project to the NFL game? Has he already ascended and topped his talent level at the college, and he's not going to get any better? Because that's what you got to think about. This is an investment, again, in another 4 to 5 years. These contracts are 4 to 5 years long. What does this guy project to be out for 4 to 5 years?
Right.
And that's where I think you see when people, when you hear the analysts, nitpick, oh, he's a 3rd round grade, or oh, this you reached for him and stuff. Well, you may think it's a reach based on what he did in college, but they may project him out to be a much better pro than he was a college player. Right. And speaking of that, that's kind of the pick that the two guys they picked in the 2nd round fit that billing. If people look at him and go, well, yeah, they were okay college. Well, you reached for them, or you took something you didn't need to take at this point in the draft. So, I'll throw it to you for this one, but you can take the next pick right here.
I mean, obviously not as familiar, but yeah, Derek Hall was their next pick, right, from Auburn. and he's a guy, he's long. Ran a 4.55 at the combine. So, a lot of speed there coming off that edge. And again, sort of a guy that was like, you know, pretty productive in the SEC. And, here's a guy that they say, was probably a little underrated and said, hey, we don't need to go after the like you said, the guys that really put up all these massive numbers and say, no, we're going to plug and play our needs here at receiver and at corner, and we will get to it. We have edge rushers. People forget about free agency. We talked about that. They address some of that. Now, so they go and get Hall, and it's like, this kid looks like he could be a productive guy. I mean, I'm excited about him. I think it was a good pick. I mean, did they reach? I don't know. I mean, with that speed and that power, pretty productive in where he played.
Well,
Maybe you can add
and
on
that's the
Hall.
thing. Like, I'll add to it, but like basically, the kid played at Auburn
Yeah,
for 3 years. He was one of the most productive pass rushers in the SEC. So when people think of that, you got to think about the tackles he's playing against. A majority of them are usually NFL bound guys that he's going up against week in and week out. The dude has quickness. He has bend and length, which will help him keep his pass production. He's a little weak in the run game, but he's an edge defender in a 3-4 scheme. So it depends who you have out there with him because in that system, you have a rotation of guys that play the edge. It's not just one bona fide guy. This is the guy. So, you got to think Nuosu still in Seattle, Taylor. To me, he's an upgrade on Darrell Taylor. So you got to think Darrell Taylor was taken in the second round out of Tennessee coming out. This guy to me, I think is a hedge against Darrell Taylor next year because it is his contract year this year
yeah,
coming up. He's going to
yeah,
go into free agency. I think this guy's a better prospect than Darrell Taylor because he has one thing that Darrell Taylor doesn't have. He has an insane amount of power. You watch his rush, like he needs to develop, some counters to it, but he can take a tackle and run that guy back. So I honestly think he's going to come in and I wouldn't put a stretch thing as he's a rotational guy this year. Comes in, starts getting hot, kind of like Frank Clark and that did, this second half of their rookie season. I could see him walking out of the season with 5.5 sacks,
yeah.
which
Nice.
you're adding to, Chenna's 9 or possibly 10 he might get again this year. Draymond Jones comes in and he averages 6 to 10 sacks a year. So you're adding to that pass rush. You're not looking just for a guy.
Right.
You're adding to your
You're
collective that
adding.
you've
Yeah.
already got. So no, I like the pick. And I honestly think, based on where he went off on the board, like sometimes you got to shoot your shot and take the guy there, even though everybody else doesn't think, because no one knows how that board's going to fall after that. They could have missed on Hall, taken somebody else, like saying taking the center from Minnesota, and all of a sudden a run goes on edge rushers and Hall's gone. And now, the guy they picked later on that we'll talk about on day 3 ends up being a second round pick now for you because this run's taken off. And that's your guy that's of value. So no, I like the pick, and I think people will see that it was actually the right call for Seattle to make there. I'd give that pick probably a B+ grade if I'm sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And I like what you're saying about Taylor because I think they had high expectations for Taylor. Especially after his first year and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, this guy's. I mean, we all thought, hey, this guy is the next guy here. Like he's a
Yep.
beast. And then he just
Like
dropped off.
he had
He
9 sacks
he
last
had
year,
the
but he's not
numbers at the end.
consistent.
He's not consistent, and you know how numbers can get skewed sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we. I mean, I'm watching every game all the time, and uh, and you're like, yeah, the sacks started adding up, but it just I don't know how I can't put my finger on it, but it was like that was a I don't know if I want to say overinflated 9, you know what I mean? But it was like it wasn't
I
it
think you're
wasn't
on the
the
right.
impact
Yeah, you're
guy.
on the right ballpark there because I think if you take Chen Nwosu away from the team last year and his impact, because he made an impact. Like you knew when Chenna was on the field, like there was a constant rush. And I think that contributes to what you're talking about the overinflated thing. I think that was a byproduct of how well Chenna rushed gave Daryl the ability to have the impact that he did. I don't think Daryl, if we take Chenna away, can do that game in and game out.
For sure. And like I said, I like Daryl, but I think the Hawks are looking at it like, I don't think we're gonna pay this guy. Like
Nope.
it's just not a guy that you're gonna put money onto. And like you said, so this guy could be, hey, he's part of the whole package, and I don't see Daryl Taylor long term in Seattle by any means.
All right.
So,
So
anyways, yeah, moving on. Let's go to the next pick. Why don't you
so the
take
next
that
pick for
take that over?
Seattle was a running back,
Yep.
second round, second
Yep.
year in a row they did this.
Yeah.
Took Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA, and I love this pick. Honestly, he on my board was the number 2 like tier of running backs, and he was kind of by himself, to be honest. So it went, you had Gibbs, you had now I can't remember the kid's name, Bijan Robinson, and then it was Zach Charbonnet. And the thing for me with Charbonnet is he is a power back. He gives you something that Ken Walker doesn't. It's do you remember the old USC days with Reggie Bush and Lindell White when
Yeah.
Pete was there?
Oh yeah.
This is what it reminds me of, because not saying Ken Walker's Reggie Bush, but Ken Walker is your slasher. He
Right.
goes and he can be your home run threat. Boom, busted, 70 yards down the sideline like he did to the Chargers. Gone, touchdown. But the thing I noticed with Ken Walker last year is he looked for that too often.
Right.
And he'd get caught and he'd get, lose a yard or just get back to the line of scrimmage instead of just hitting it up there and taking the 3 yards he needed to take. And I think for Seattle, that's what they looked at this and went, we can go get Zach Charbonnet. Like, this guy can come in, be an impact player. He gives you another bell cow back. And so listening to a lot of the analysts, their comp for him is actually funny. If you look at how he plays very similar to a previous Seattle running back. And a lot of the guys are saying that that's the kind of guy that they pro comp him as is Marshawn. You watch how he runs, his lateral movement now, and he's not going to bust one and take it for 60, but he is averaged 4 to 5 yards a carry over the last 2 years. And after contact, he averaged 5.7 yards. So that means after that initial pop with somebody, he's still gaining 5 yards after that. That is something in an offense like Seattle likes to run. You need to have that guy that you can turn to and be like, hey, I need 5 yards. We're going to get 5 yards. We're going to give you the ball and you're going to pound it out for us. I know a lot of people with fantasy football are all worried about Ken Walker's value and stuff. So here's my initial kind of view on it is this allows you to play matchup ball, because last year when Rashad got hurt for Seattle, they got limited in how they could play matchups. So like when they played Tampa Bay in England, Tampa Bay did a really good job of playing a stretched out 4-man front and basically not allowing Seattle to get to the edge with Walker. And Walker isn't a in between the tackle runner all that much. Well, now you can look at it and you go, okay, this game we're playing the Chargers. They have a terrible interior defense. You're going to get 12. And you can play that matchup game now, which gives you more flexibility as a play caller. You're not stuck being, I got to feed only a one-dimensional back. You've got a bunch. So I really like the pick. I think it gives them a tremendous two-headed monster now in Seattle with the running game. And if you watch his feet, they're very, very reminiscent of Nick Chubb. Like they're stuck to the ground and bang, he just levels it out and powers forward. So I really like that pick. I think it's going to be a good one for Seattle in the long haul. And I think it's going to give the longevity to Ken Walker a little bit longer in his career, having a guy that spill him where you're not like, hey, you need to have 300 touches this year. You can go,
Well,
yeah, you can have like 200 or
yeah.
175.
And that's a nice thing too. Just to compliment, alone with Ken is that, yeah, because Ken was hurt last year.
Yep.
Like you just can't run him out there. People want to criticize. I know people were criticizing the. Get rid of this. People were criticizing or not. I don't know. You heard some people like you said, second year in a row, second round pick on a back. Okay, so what? That's what they want to do. They want to run the rock. So you took Ken, and how did that work out? It worked out fantastic. Well, let's hit another home run and go two-headed monster and have the depth. And we'll touch on the seventh round pick later, but you need it at that position. The days are dead where you're running and gunning with one back, 90% of the time. I mean, it's just not successful because we saw when Ken went down, God, they looked bad in the offense.
Oh, we didn't
It,
have
it,
another back. What were you gonna do? Turn to
it
DJ Dallas
I
and
mean,
freaking
it was painful. Travis Homer and fumbling balls and like I like DJ Dallas, like not, but like as a special teams dude, like
yep.
like I like the guy. He seems like a good dude to have in your team, but I'm sorry, man, you're not winning football games with him getting 60% of the snaps, so it was a good pick. And like you said, he's a physical downhill runner. Like, bring it on. And then you got and another dog in with Canine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
God, like you hit on the receiver, then a couple picks later you got your back.
Yep.
It's just it just feels like it's coming together, and I'm so excited the way the way they did it. It's like, no, we're gonna go get our back. We don't care. We need them. We're taking them in the second round.
We're
We
gonna do
don't
things
care.
our way.
Our way, like Detroit did their things their way, where they took 12. That was a little surprising, but I don't know if I agree with that. But second round, hey, not as it's like people say, well, the running back is not. Look, it's still an important position. You might not be maxing a guy out, you know, because they just don't last.
I look
But
at it this way, Ryan. The second round is the new first round for running backs. We used
right
to have guys
there,
like
you go.
LaDainian Tomlinson
There you go.
and Adrian Peterson. Now you're seeing those type of players for that position being drafted in the second round. K9, Zach Charbonnet, other guys like you still, and that's where for me, I look at like what you said Detroit did, or I look at Atlanta taking Bijan Robinson. That's a lot to invest because you think of backs that have gone in the top round in say the last 7 years. Rashad Penny didn't work out very well. Saquon had one really good year, and Saquon's even kind of been a hit and miss, like to the point where
Big time.
New York doesn't really want to pay the dude. Like, but then you go look at a team like Kansas City last year, and they pick out a guy in like the 6th round and goes in and plays running back. Chris Carson in Seattle was one of the top running backs in the NFL. It was a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
You don't have to invest much. So that's what I'm saying. The second round now is your new first round. If you want to get elite talent at that position, yeah, you might have to spend a second round pick for it.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree spending a first round pick for it like the Lions and Falcons
especially
did.
early first.
Yeah, like we're talking like in the 20s to 32 area. Okay, we know the talent pool's second round kind of there. But yeah, that was an interesting. But let's continue on this draft thing. So
Yeah, so they go Bradford, guard out of LSU. Versatile, seems like a versatile pick, right? Sort of he'll be playing inside, right? He knows that, but I mean, I like the kid. 11 starts at right guard. He can play tackle too, so I mean, seems like a solid pick. They need some help inside there too. So I mean, Damian Lewis is there still. It'll be interesting. What are your thoughts on him?
I like him. He fills it. He gives you competition. He could be a starter.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure he's a plug and play guy this year. He may rotate with Phil Haynes, but the dude's big. He moves people. He needs to improve on his pass block. But again, Andy Dickerson's a really good O-line coach who now Seattle has there, which since he's taken over, which he did last year, you see what he did with Lucas and Cross and just some of the pieces, guys looked a lot better. So, I definitely like the pick. I think it definitely merits value for sure at that pick. Like I thought that dude was going to be gone in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
They're able to trade back, which again, they trade with Denver and fleece Denver out of the 3rd round pick next year.
Right. Yeah.
So you get a good guard. Now, that's what I liked about this. In the first 2 rounds, you went out and got difference makers.
Right.
Now,
Big time.
rounds 4 to 7, you're now filling those voids with depth players, guys that can come in and fill a niche for you in your or on your team. So, like,
Right.
we'll go to the next pick. So, the next pick, round 4, Cameron Young out of Mississippi. There's your nose tackle. Everyone was
Mm.
clamoring, we need a nose tackle. We need a nose
Yeah, yeah,
tackle.
yeah, yeah.
This guy comes in, and he is essentially a good comp for him would be a Taba Rubin, who used to play with Seattle, played with Cleveland before. Guy's about 300 pounds. He's long. He's a two gap guy. Like he's gonna be your early rundown defender kind of guy. But he fills that void that they didn't have last year. They didn't have a guy like Puna was too small.
Yeah.
Al Woods was a large dude, but he's getting older. So now
Getting
you've got
old,
that
man.
in between guy.
Yeah.
So I like the young pick. I think he's going to be a good early round down defender. His pass rushing game isn't there. He's not going to get you a bunch of sacks,
Yeah.
but he can definitely come in and impact that run game, which was a problem for us last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, that's a key too. That's more than anything is a run game. Guys that can guys that can slow down the run, right? Which was their biggest problem. So it's a good pick, man. Like you said, just fill in the voids, fill in the gaps, right? Next guy, Michigan product, Mike Morris. This kid, like big kid, real big kid. Doesn't seem like the most explosive off that line, but is a physical guy, and he wreaked havoc in Michigan. Just another guy, like he's a depth guy. It's gonna be interesting to see the how he gets in the rotation. But I like him.
I think he's going to be a steal and a really, really dark horse player for Seattle because of this reason. Like you said, big dude. He's 6'6", I think, or
Six
something
six,
ridiculous like
six
that.
six.
But he at Michigan, he got buried because they had Hutchinson, they had a bunch of other guys on that D line, so he never really got to kind of to get into a groove. And I don't really think Michigan knew how to use him because of his size. They had him get down to about 275, so he was like a lighter guy. Well, it was funny because Seattle drops him, and everyone's like, "Well, what role does he fit in a 3-4?" Well, it's funny. You listen to the phone call with Clint Hurt and Mike Moe, and he goes, "Hey man, I need you to be 295.
Get the
Like I
cows
need you to
get the
keep
cows
the
up.
weight
Get the
on."
cows up.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
Hurt's hilarious.
oh, he's a
Dude,
great
he's
guy to listen
hilarious.
to.
Yeah.
But he put up last year in a rotational role 37 pressures and on which is a lot. Like for a guy that's a rotational rusher, that's effective. Like I think he comes in and he's going to be your rotational guy for Draymond Jones, who you just signed. Like they're kind of similarly built. They apply the power. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a steal for Seattle, and I think teams are going to look down the line and go, "Shit, like this guy should like a lot of people had him as a late second, early third round grade. You're getting him late in the fourth. Can't really complain." So, and then moving on the draft, they go Michigan again.
Okay.
Almost
Hey,
back to back.
back to back, man. And before we touch on that, let's take a quick break. We'll take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and we'll touch on another Michigan product here. All right. Welcome back. Let's keep it rolling. Let's get into one of you hit on round 5. Pick
All right,
1, 5,
so
4.
They went through with Mike Morris.
Yeah.
So then they double back and they go back to Michigan again. And this is
I
what
love
everyone
this
was
pick.
clamoring for. Seattle needs to draft a center. Well, Luke Webler was still on the board from Ohio State, another Big Ten center. He kept falling. John Michael Schmidt from Minnesota had gone. Tepperman had gone from Wisconsin. So now it's like, okay, what's Seattle going to do? Are they going to? And I thought they were going to take Luke Webler. I was thinking, okay, Webler's still on the board. He was one of the top centers in this draft class. I had totally forgot about this guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher the name. I'm almost certain of it.
For sure.
But Olu Olawatami, I think is how you say it.
I think
I'm
you're pretty good.
close. So this dude won the Joe Moore Award with winning Michigan's offensive line in 2022, which is the top offensive line in college football. The dude is smart, like football IQ, high prospect IQ. Like You watch him play, like he may not be the most physically imposing center, but you almost don't need your center to be sometimes if you got good solid
Yeah.
guards with him. Like you need a guy that's going to get the guys into the right front, how to block it up. Um, he's got 4 years of starting experience at Michigan, which you're playing big boy football in the Big Ten. You're playing for Jim Harbaugh, which is run the ball, play smash mouth, type of stuff Seattle likes to do. I think this is, again, I think the two Michigan players are going to be the two biggest steals out of this draft class for Seattle. I think this guy may end up being one of the top centers out of this draft class. I think he's going to be probably number 2 behind John Michael Schmidt. I think he comes in and competes with Evan Brown to start this year as a center. Because you got Evan Brown, who they signed from Detroit, who's a journeyman.
Yeah.
You got Joey Hunt, who we all know the Joey Hunt experience. He's really undersized.
Oh man,
This guy, I honestly think will come in, and I think he'll push Evan Brown. And the beauty of it is he's a true center. Evan Brown can still slide to guard. So if you have some depth concerns, or say Lewis gets hurt, or one of the Phil Haynes gets hurt, you can slide Evan Brown to guard, and you still have that the line's not completely ruined by that. So no, I think it's a really good value pick there. I think they're gonna get a great player out of it. So yeah, that kind of wrapped up. So now we get into round 6, and that's where Seattle decided to take
Jarek Reed.
Jarek Reed, a very undersized strong safety / nickel.
Yeah, interesting pick, man. I mean, the one thing I read about him was, great run defender. Great run defender. I mean, he does a lot of good things, but yeah, undersized guys. Like, I guess it's a depth pick. I mean, he's. I don't know if he even sees the field. We'll see, but it's. I mean, maybe they like the fact that he's a good run defender, but I'm not too sure. It's a late pick. It's a depth pick. I mean, I don't know what else you can add there.
You know who he reminds me of? Seattle's starting free safety. He came in about the same round, kind of. I think Quandre, the 5th round pick.
Right.
Same kind of characteristics. Really strong run defender.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. I think he comes in and helps at free safety.
Okay.
They don't really have a backup free safety right now.
Right.
They've got Julian Love, but he's more of a strong than this guy.
Right.
I think this guy comes and cuts his teeth on special teams for the first bit, but I do think you'll see him eventually move into possibly being a guy that they think about as a Quandre Diggs replacement a couple years down the line, and see what happens there. So
interesting. Yeah. Okay. So you like the pick? I mean, shit. 6th round pick. So you can't really go wrong, right? I mean, especially if they like some of his attributes. I mean, like I said, I don't know too much about the kid, but hey, man, if he reminds you a little bit about Quandre, I like him. You know what I mean? If he's got those attributes, then yeah, shit. Let's see what he can do in camp.
So then the last pick of this draft class, which I think again kind of surprised everybody, even though it's a 7th rounder.
Yeah.
Kenny McIntosh,
running
back, Georgia.
Yeah.
And when this came through and I saw it, I can't remember. I was out. I think I was driving listening to the draft, and this came through. I was ecstatic about this pick. Watching this guy play.
I love it.
The 2 running backs they've now collected in this draft fill immediate voids of Rashad Penny leaving and Travis Homer, but these guys, in my opinion, are better than the 2 guys that they're replacing. So I think Charbonnet's an upgrade over Penny. He doesn't nearly have the same injury history or problems. He's more of a complete back.
Yeah.
And McIntosh here, he can go and play receiver.
Versatile.
He can slide out and be a receiver, and he warrants it. He wants it. He's like, come bring your linebacker out here and cover me in space. Let's see how this goes for you. He averaged 5 yards a carry at Georgia, and he's not a big back. Like, he's not some big mess. Like, the dude played in the SEC. He runs hard. He played in probably one of the best offenses the last couple of years, Georgia there. But he adds you versatility, and it gives you a complement to the 2 backs you already have. He does something better than both of them, which is catch the ball out of the backfield.
I love the versatility aspect of it, right? I mean, the versatility aspect that you have a guy that, like you said, can catch. He's got hands out of the backfield. It's awesome, and he's not afraid. He'll put his head down. He'll put his head down and go through. I mean, I was looking at his statistics too. Last year, 42 catches for 506. I mean, you got to love that. And then 141 carries for 779 and 12 TDs. So super productive and so versatile.
Yep.
To have a guy like that, like you said, sounds like it could be. I mean, maybe not, but it sounds like it could be the end for DJ Dallas in Seattle too. But we'll wait and see. But I like this kid too. I mean, and you see the phone call. I mean, you gotta love that, right? With just hey mom, hey, it's John Schneider and Pete Carroll on the phone. I mean, crying and just and that's the other beauty about the NFL draft. Seeing guys like that are just dreams come true, and
Yep.
getting a guy that they probably were surprised that he was still available at that pick.
Well, you listen to John Schneider talk about it, he was surprised he was still there. And then on top of that, Kenny, in his interview he did with the Seattle sports
I
station down
saw
there,
that. I heard
he
that. It's
he
awesome.
basically was like, I'm fielding calls as like going expecting to go undrafted and
Yeah.
go as a free agent to somebody, and then Seattle
Exactly.
calls him.
Yeah.
So, that's one
Yeah.
thing you got to think about in that 6th and 7th round for some of these guys is they're starting to field calls because they're going to be a free agent and they're trying to
Yeah.
get on with the team and get a
Yeah.
priority seat in one of those teams. You get drafted, it kind of takes all the pressure off in that regard and allows you to just go and compete
Exactly.
again.
Exactly. No, I think that pick just honestly just summed up the draft as a whole. I mean, from round 1, pick 5 to their last pick. I mean, to get a guy like that, because you already got your back from UCLA, who's gonna be probably one of your main backs with Ken. And then you got a guy like this that can come in and just be that versatility guy. And obviously depth too. If one of the guys goes down, here's a guy that, hey, we can bring him in and he can do a lot of different things in this offense, right? So it was awesome to get two backs. It seemed like they can be very productive, and like you said, your comparison, Charbonneau, not the injury history. That was the
Yeah.
problem with Penny. I love Penny. I loved his heart. I loved just everything about him. But like the dude just could never stay on the field. It was heartbreaking. And it was like, man, and I thought maybe they would try to bring him back one more year, but it was over.
Well, I think they did. They did try to, but he wanted to move on. He actually was like,
Right.
I need to leave Seattle and try and just, it's not working here. I need to go cut my teeth somewhere else and see if it's,
Which
a fresh start,
makes
which I
sense.
get. Like, he's
get.
been here for
And I
4
think a
years.
lot of that too in the injury history plays a role. And not it's not it's a mental thing too, saying like not that hey, I can't get hurt somewhere else, but it's like, look, I keep getting hurt here. The media's on me and blah blah blah. It's like
Exactly.
I need a clear headspace. I'm gonna go to a new city. They know my abilities, and I have a chance here to have a healthy season and play all 17 games and fresh start, which is great. And Seattle moved on quickly, and it's yeah. I mean, overall for me, it's an A draft. Just the way it looks on paper, the holes they filled, the first round we talked about, all the above, man. Stuff that I didn't predict was going to happen, but that's why I'm not in the front office either. Real quick, I know we talked about it. We were hyped on Anthony Richardson. We thought about, hey, if he's at 5, let's run to the podium and announce his name. Obviously, he went one pick ahead to Indianapolis. Interesting in a couple of ways. I want to touch on this first because if Seattle would have picked him, he doesn't start right away.
No.
Like, he might start year 2, but if Geno has a great year, he won't start till year 3.
Yep.
Right? That's probably safe to say. In Indianapolis, he might be starting week 1.
He'll start week 1.
Right. So it's an interesting dynamic for him as a development. Like you're into the fire. Like for him, I mean, it might work out. But for a guy that just didn't have that many starts in college, and you're basing this on his Potential. It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. The one thing I will say though is I think besides landing in Seattle, where he would have sat and learned, he couldn't have landed in a better situation with the offensive coordinator, or sorry, I should say the head coach that's now in Indianapolis, because it is the Philadelphia Eagles old OC who worked with Jalen Hurts. And what were Jalen Hurts' biggest issues coming out?
Yeah.
Accuracy, ball. They're going to do
Yeah.
the
You're
same
right. You're
offense
right.
that the
You're
Eagles
right.
have done. This will get Richardson going. I'm glad he's in the AFC and not in the NFC to another
Mm.
team. Means I don't have to see him that much if he turns into a
Yeah.
complete superstar and gives the Seahawks nightmares. But no, they did ask Pete and John about, who was the other player at 5, and everyone
Mm.
assumed it was going to be Will Anderson.
Right.
Apparently, it was Richardson. If Richardson had been there, it was Witherspoon or Richardson on who they were going to take. Obviously, the Colts made that pick for them, but no,
Do you still do you
I
yeah,
think if
go ahead.
he's there, I think Seattle takes him. I do.
Yeah.
I think what you might have
Yeah.
seen there is you would have seen him go, and then I think you would have seen either Seattle try to trade up and still try and go get a corner like a Witherspoon, because it's very interesting on how it all fell, because I think what you alluded to earlier, how Richardson going at 4 then proceeded to change the entire board of the NFL
Right.
draft,
Right.
because
Right.
I think Detroit was set to take Witherspoon. And when
Yeah.
Seattle picked him, it threw them into a fit. They didn't know what to do. So they took Gibbs early, the running back.
Yeah.
And I think it just threw the whole thing out of the, like, it was just like, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing?
Was that a curveball from Indianapolis? Like, did they were we
I think it was.
expecting
I think a
that?
lot of
Yeah.
people were expecting Will Levis to be that pick, not
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson.
That's great.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think that threw a curveball for a lot of people. I think the other curveball was Houston going back up and getting Will Anderson.
That was crazy. I
That
mean, what
was
that
that
was
was a
awesome for
surprising one.
Houston.
That's really
It
good for Houston.
yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like that's very much a. I know D'Amico Ryans wanted
Yeah.
Will Anderson. That's come
For
out
sure.
numerous times. Is
For
that's who he, and I
sure.
think Will Anderson will end up being the face of that franchise more so than CJ Stroud will.
I mean, I like him.
He's a good down to earth guy. He's a hard worker. Not saying CJ Stroud isn't, but I think with having a defensive minded head coach, that now you have your premium edge rusher. I think that's going to be your face of your franchise. And the fact they went back up, so you could tell the Stroud pick was definitely an owner influence pick. They wanted a quarterback. Okay, we're going to go get the quarterback. But then I think Casio did a really good job of coming back up, trading with, because the Cardinals wanted out so badly. You could tell they wanted out so badly. Um, to then, come back and trade back in with Detroit. So Detroit then gets out. They can take Gibbs later on, and they go up and get, I think it was the O tackle from Ohio State, Johnson, to protect
Right.
Kyler.
Right.
But you could see how much that whole shift, Seattle taking Witherspoon, Houston getting doubled up in the 2 and 3 pick, really led to Indianapolis kind of being the lynch point of the draft, where if they took Will Levis, Seattle takes Richardson, Detroit stays at 6 and takes Witherspoon, and we may have a totally different draft on our hands. But because it didn't, it'll be very interesting now to see what Seattle does, because next year you don't have a top high pick unless you tank this year, which we don't think they're going to do. They're going to probably be a
No.
better team
No.
than they were last year.
No. They're competing for the division this year.
Um, I think it'll be interesting to see how Drew Lock plays this preseason,
Hmm. Hmm.
because last year he got kind of hampered with, he got sick, and the
Yeah.
biggest thing I've heard with Drew Lock is that Seattle, like Pete Carroll and John Schneider, really like him. They
I heard
actually
that. Yeah.
wanted him
Yeah.
in that trade with Russell. It wasn't like he was just
Yeah.
thrown in. They actually
Right.
requested he be a part of it.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a good chance if he has a really good preseason, cleans up his decision making, that he gets a contract extension, and Seattle may go say, "Hey, Drew Lock's going to be the guy after Gino's done."
Hmm. Yeah. I
Because
like that thinking in it.
here's the thing, and this is where a lot of people I was talking to were talking about Hendon Hooker,
Right.
Will Levis. Do you want those two? So just hear me out here. So you got those
Yeah.
two guys, 24-year-old, 25-year-old, and you can throw
Right.
Stetson Bennett in there at 25. So they're all
Sure.
that age.
Yeah.
They're rookies. or do you want the 24-year-old Drew Lock who's been in the league for 4 years?
Right.
And that's something you can't gauge, that NFL experience, being in the weight room, being in the meeting rooms, being in and doing that whole living that
Absolutely.
whole life for 4 years. Why are you going to take the rookie guy, that's 25 and never done that? Or why don't I just keep going with Drew Lock here, who's of the same age, same talent, but he's been in the league for 4 years already and knows what the expectations are?
And I agree. Yeah, and I think to your point there, that's you're bang on because if they, I think if they don't take Richardson, they're like, we're done. We're not taking a quarterback
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we have a guy in Drew Lock, and like you said, similar age, but he's been in the league for what 4 years, whatever it is. You can't. That's invaluable, right?
Yep.
And like so, if they would have taken Richardson, they're in a similar position where this guy's such a freak and the ceiling's so high, but he gets to sit behind Geno. He's in the quarterback room. He's in the meetings. He's with the team. He's just in that whole environment for a couple of years. So now we can transition him. But to take a guy in later draft who's not that high a ceiling, a Hendon Hooker, for example, or whatever,
Yeah.
they're thinking, well, why waste a pick on that when we already have a guy
Yep.
in Drew Lock? Like they're all prospects at this point. Hendon Hooker could be absolute garbage.
Yep.
We don't know. So could Will Levis. So it's again something that people forget sometimes. Oh, we got Geno. What's gonna happen? We need a guy. Well, wait a second. You might have the guy. You might have him. He's sitting in the bench right now, and
Yep.
and they think highly of him. So let's wait and not press the panic button on that right now. Whatever. I'm not even thinking quarterback anymore. Anyways, I like the Richardson idea if it was there, and like you said, they probably take him. And I like what you said. They trade up and then they go get Witherspoon. They figure it out because they want that cornerback.
Yep.
But Richardson's done. Now what they've done, they got an opportunity, in my opinion, to compete for this division.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
really do because I really think, and maybe I mean, look, San Francisco's so deep. But I always just think they're a quarterback miss. They're missing a quarterback. I mean, people can rave about the Mr. Relevant pick. He's Mr. Relevant for a reason. Like he's not like I'm not saying he can't win, but wouldn't you be a little more confident with more of a blue chip QB with that team? So without that guy, I still think it's that much tighter. So for me, with Geno, with this team they're putting together, man, I mean, they got a really, really good shot at winning this division.
Well, here's the thing you got to look at with Seattle right now. They have so many key pieces that are on rookie deals for the next 4 to 5 years
Yeah,
that the teams like LA is going to be in a total rebuild now.
yeah, for a
The
long time.
Niners, after this year, you've got to start making some decisions on who you're
Yeah,
paying because
that's it, right?
Bosa's up for money. Armstead will be up for money. Warner will be up again for money. Like, how are you're
Can't
not
keep
going
them
to
all,
keep
man.
this nucleus together. It's
You
not going to
can't.
stay all together.
You can't.
And you've traded away a lot of your top end picks to get a
Right.
Christian McCaffrey, to get
Yeah.
different players. So this is where you look at Seattle. They're in year 2 of this retooling. I don't call it a rebuild. I call it a retool. They
No,
basically
no, never
retooled.
call it a rebuild. Yeah, they
And
retool.
you're in a position where realistically the king of the NFC is the Eagles. They have every right to be. They drafted well. They're probably the only, like, I would say them and Seattle
Yeah.
had the two best drafts.
Yeah, they dropped it well.
So that's your other team that you're going to be competing with, and the Niners. But the
Right.
Niners are at that point now where they're going to start petering off, and this is where Seattle can overtake them, go back to being one of their perennial contenders, and add a couple more pieces next year in the draft, whatever they may be and whatever come as needs. But
Yeah.
you know, I like what Seattle did. I give them an A as well in this draft. I think that's
Beauty.
2 A's back to back.
Yeah, it's
That's not
awesome.
something that's easy, but you definitely have got the pieces now in place to start really competing again.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do. So I mean, I just love what they did. I love everything that we talked about. It's gonna be exciting, man. It's gonna be exciting. I think next episode we'll kind of dig in a little deeper and kind of see how these guys are gonna sort of work in a camp and compete,
For
and
sure.
exactly where they're gonna sort of fit in. And I mean, we touched on a little bit of that, but yeah, I think that this was good. We just kind of just touched on every guy, and gave people a little insight, and yeah, we're all both obviously excited, and A's across the board.
Sounds good to me, man.
Cool, man. So all right, that's it for this episode. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.
See you later.
All right, cool. Yeah, that was good, man.
Yeah.
I thought that flowed pretty good.
It did. Yeah, I thought it floated really good. And yeah, let's try and do maybe Sunday night or something like that. We'll record
Sure, yeah.
the other one, and then that way we have the two to get them out over the next little bit here.
Yeah, so what do you
Yeah, like we can call it like camp battle segment or something, and then like pick a couple guys that you think like out of the draft class, and like I've already got a couple guys in head. Like I think D Eskridge, or like we can not even say battle, but like guys going in that are on the bubble, and then why they're on the bubble. So like D Eskridge is one for me. Mike Jackson's another one because of the corner edition. You know, Drake Young. Yeah, so he's another one. Yeah, so he's another interesting guy that I think is going to play a role. You know, and then we can talk, you know, different pieces here and there about that. So yeah, then we can do the women's football thing. Yep. No, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Sounds good. Sounds good, man. I'll see you then. Sounds good. All right. Talk to you later, man.